We, in fact, do not live on stolen land. This whole story of a country built on oppression and subjugation of so-called indigenous people is not true. I mean,
all right, so this video is a little bit of a hot topic, and yeah, let's just get into it.
Check out this clip. It's classic settler colonial gaslighting.
we, in fact, do not live on stolen land. This whole story of a country built on oppression and subjugation of so-called indigenous people is not true. I mean, just imagine what it's like. You come to this new land that you've never seen, you know nothing about, there are no maps, and you get here and you encounter people who are running around naked or in loincloths, murdering each other brutally, and in some cases, eating each other. What conclusions would you draw about these people? Would you conclude that they are savages? Yeah, I think so. The lack of brutality on the part of the European and American settlers is pretty surprising and admirable.
Now let's break this down. You claim to see savages because of a loincloth. Your analysis isn't a historical observation, it's a confession of intellectual laziness. When Europeans arrived in the Americas, they found advanced societies that they couldn't even begin to understand. They encountered the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, a representative democracy that was functioning while Europeans were still burning witches and dying of plagues because of open sewer cities. You call us savages, but indigenous nations had complex legal systems, agricultural science that has later fed the entire world, and trade routes across the continent. Now let's talk about admirable restraint. The first settlers were so civilized that they were reduced to grave robbing and cannibalism within months. In Jamestown and Plymouth, Europeans were digging up graves and eating each other because they couldn't survive on this land. Land that indigenous people had managed perfectly since time immemorial. You didn't build this country from scratch. You survived on the charity of indigenous people that you later murdered. It's well documented that indigenous people taught you how to plant food, how to hunt, how to navigate. You want to talk about brutality? Let's talk about the California genocide. The state of California funded the slaughter of 90% of the indigenous population. This includes scalp bounties, forced slavery, and sex trafficking. We can talk about massacres, forced removals, broken treaties, the kidnapping of indigenous children, kill the Indian, save the man. This land wasn't conquered, it wasn't discovered, it was legally plundered through religious decrees like the doctrine of discovery. The civilization you defend was built on the sexual assault of indigenous women and little boys and girls. And that is not up for debate. This is well documented. This land was stolen through the 1830 Indian Removal Act, the 1887 Allotment Act, plenary power, over 370 broken treaties. To claim that this land wasn't stolen is the biggest colonial fantasy ever. The savagery wasn't people wearing loincloths. It was the people who arrived here as beggars and were treated with compassion and love, and responded with 500 years of state-sponsored terror and violence.
All right, so this video was a little bit longer than I thought, and maybe I did not want to interrupt the video, because I know people get upset if when I do interrupt. Sometimes I talk a little bit too much. Apparently, I did not know that, but I saw one of my videos and I'm like, yeah, I do talk a little bit too much. So I do apologize sometimes. All right. So basically, the European settlers came in here, did not understand the culture. And this is the same thing in every other place too. Don't get me wrong. Here, of course, we United States, yes. And they call them savages. Who really is the savages? And I have a little bit of experience looking this stuff up, because the Europeans didn't only just come to the United States, they came to other places. And one of the places was the Caribbean. And that's my background. So I've looked up a lot there, and it's basically very similar to what happened here. They came in there, they saw the Indians, and, you know, it's a funny story in the Caribbean. I know in Puerto Rico, they came there claiming they were gods. And that's how they tricked, like, you know, they never really had visitors come like that looked like them. And they were, you know, I guess they were confused. Like, these people are saying they're gods. It's a funny story, maybe not funny. For me, it's funny. One of the main Indians, the Taino Indians, actually grabbed one of the European guys, whatever, one of the main guys, and drowned him. Drowned the guy. Because if he's a god, he said he can't die. So he drowned him and said, well, he's a god. I'm not killing anyone. Basically, I want to see him come back because he says he's a god. When the guy didn't come back, he's like, they lied to us. This is a true story. It's funny. I knew the story for a while. I forget the name now. I should look up the name of the Indian, the Taino Indian that actually did that. But again, this is the way they came in. They came in and try to fool the indigenous people the same way they came here. The indigenous people treated them well. Basically got backstabbed. Another thing, you talk about them being savages. One of the reasons why the Indians or the native people died was because the Europeans brought many diseases with them. Many sexually transmitted diseases that they passed on by being a lot of the native people. Again, they're calling the native people savages, but they're the ones that are doing this, right? And another note, a lot of those diseases that exist now were brought by the Europeans. You really could only start those diseases if you were, basically. So the native people didn't have these diseases. They didn't have this. They were not doing these things of, animals. So who's the savages? You go to a place, you basically befriend the native population, and then at the end you try to kill them and try to take the place for yourself. That's really all in a nutshell. I mean, of course, it's more complicated than that. I'm not going to say it's that simple, but if you want to break it down, that's kind of what happened. And they did rinse, wash, and repeat over and over again. They did it through the Caribbean. They were here. It is what it is. And it happened a long time ago, and it's one of those things that, why are people still now trying to erase that history? It happened. If anything, you want to learn by that. Consider yourself better. I think Matt Walsh, by saying that, he put himself in that same brainwave as those original people that came in there and were savages. If you believe this, I don't know if he really believes what the words that are coming out of his mouth, or if he is just trying to convince his viewers into this. And if that's true, he really does think the viewers are complete idiots. I don't know. It's the only way. It's literally the only way. Unless if people don't want to know that history, or never took history class, or maybe the history class now is so simplified or so washed away of the real history that people don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Look, leave your comments below. Be safe.